I am guided by imagination, open to my creation, creating wins and celebrations. Don't be overwhelmed by information, more important than education. Be inspired by your exploration, on the path to your destination, leading to innovation. Yes, you are guided by imagination.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of the Guided by Imagination podcast. I'm your hostess, Jenny Edwards, and I'm so grateful that we get to meet amazing people in this world, that we get to expand our networks, because I met an incredible woman, Stephanie O'Brien, who's a guest today on this episode. Welcome, Stephanie.
Well, thank you so much, Jenny. I appreciate the introduction. I appreciate this chance to be here with you in front of your audience, to sharing some value with them today.
Yes, absolutely. I'm really excited too. And I am really curious to hear how imagination has made a difference in your life. But first, for anyone that hasn't met you before, Stephanie is a writer, an editor, and a coaching program design specialist. Ooh, that sounds really awesome. Sounds so fancy.
Oh, thank you.
And I love to hear a little bit about imagination. And obviously you are creative because you are a writer. And how has imagination made a difference for you?
I'd say imagination has actually been the basis for a lot of the connections I've made in my life. I've been a novelist since I was a preteen. Actually, wrote my first full-length novel as a 12-year-old. It was a terrible novel, but still a full-length novel I wrote when I was 12. But yeah, as a child, I struggled to make friends. You know, those kids who feel like everybody got a manual for human interaction except for them? That's how I felt as a kid. But as a teenager, my parents divorced, family moved out into the sticks. So I figured, if kids aren't going to hang out with me if I'm 2 blocks away, they're not going to hang out with me when I'm half an hour away. So I started doing, most of my interacting online. Got onto a site where there were a lot of storytelling competitions. I started getting into those and using my imagination to come up with stories to share with others. And that's how I finally started making real connections with people, through our shared love of stories, through them commenting on my stories and me asking them about their stories. So yeah, imagination ended up being the foundation for a lot of my relationships in life.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, you were able to use something like technology to kind of bring a lot of other resources your way at a young age too.
Yeah, it's to find people who were just, a better fit for me than the people I'd been meeting offline as a kid.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And especially when I can relate because I grew up in the sticks. I grew up in a rural area, and so there weren't very many other kids around. And I think that imagination has made a huge role in my life as well, because you just don't have especially you mentioned the social aspects, and also you just don't have as many resources around. There's not lots of events to go to or lots of opportunities, especially as a child. So it kind of helps when you can activate that creativity. It can help you really transform and feel a lot more happiness.
Yeah, very much so.
Where did you move to?
For a while we went by Nesbitt, which I can almost guarantee you won't have heard of because it's this tiny speck on a map full of other tiny specks.
Well, everybody can derive life lessons from specks if we choose to.
Sometimes people can live in them for years on end.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously you wrote that book at 12, which is really impressive because
thank you.
The level of commitment to follow through at that life stage is usually a little different than that. So that's really cool that you did that. And I'm sure that this has been an important part of your story too, because you became a writer
Yeah, very much so. And it's actually how I ended up working with coaches, if you're interested in that story.
Yeah. How has imagination made a difference for you working with coaches?
In my writing, my fiction writing actually led me to start connecting with coaches. Got into the coaching field before I did, so I followed her into it because I've actually ended up writing 14 different novels from while I was in my teens and early 20s. So, when Mom got into life coaching, I was the family's most prolific writer. So I kind of followed her into it to learn about marketing, how to use my writing skills and my skills at taking a huge amount of information and organizing it and using that for, copywriting, content marketing, educational marketing. So yeah, I started learning about educational marketing from people like Brenda Normans, Helen Rush, Ted McGrath, if you feel like them. So and I started meeting coaches, and I fell in love with the way they were trying to be their best selves, live their best lives, help other people to do the same. And I wanted to be part of their missions. And one thing I often found was that one aspect where they struggled a bit with imagination was really putting themselves in their clients' shoes in a way that let them connect with other clients. Because they talk about stuff like, I'll help you shift your paradigms. Well, great. You, with all your training and education, understand what that means and why it's important. But your clients don't. So you need to use a bit of imagination and put yourself in your client's shoes and ask, what do my clients know? And from their position, from their level of knowledge, what do they need to hear in order to understand what my offer is and why it's important? So I started using my imagination and my writing skills to help coaches communicate what their offers were in terms that their clients could actually understand and relate to and see the value in, and to help the clients to imagine what their life could be like if they worked with these coaches, so they would actually be motivated to work with them.
I like that. That's a good perspective.
Thank you. Yeah, I find it's fairly frequent among highly educated people. They know why what they're talking about is important, but the layperson hearing them talk about this big process they take them through isn't going to hear value and benefits. They're going to hear work. So these people need to learn how to convey it in terms of value and benefits and outcomes, not just the work you need to do to get there.
Yeah. And sometimes you have to phrase it in the way that is actually motivating according to their human design or their, whatever their personality profile is.
Yeah, that whole sell them what they want, give them what they need.
Yeah. Right.
Like one litmus test I like to share with my clients is what you're talking about is the only thing people would get, would they actually buy it? If you're somebody who helps women to meet and marry the man of their dreams, and you offered to, help them to shift the mindsets that are affecting their relationships. Well, if all they got was the mindset shift, but they did not get the man of their dreams, they did not get a stable, happy marriage, would they buy it? No. But if they could get the stable, happy marriage and the amazing man without shifting their mindsets, then they would do that. So clearly it's the marriage and the amazing partner that are the selling points, not the mindset shift.
Yeah. Yeah, I need some guarantees here.
Yeah, so that's another
guarantee.
Yeah, that's another example where you need to use your imagination to think, okay, in the client's shoes, what are the things the client wants, not what they need to get what they want, but what they actually want.
Yeah. Yeah. And for marketing, speaking into that creatively so that you can actually put yourself in their shoes and get to the heart of it. Who is your target audience? What are their needs? What are their wants? What are their desires?
Yeah. If you're saying one of those Disney songs about what do they want, what would they be singing about?
Yes. Oh, Disney. There's a topic of imagination.
Yep.
So many things to think about. And I definitely want to share, how can people get in touch with you as well? Say if they're a coach, or if they need some creative writing, they need some things edited, what would be the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, I've got a few different ways. So one is my email, stephanie@coachclientconnection.com. You can also find me on Facebook under Stephanie O'Brien Coaching, LinkedIn under Stephanie O'Brien Program Design. Or if you're a coach in the audience and you're having trouble with describing your coaching program in a way that makes it tantalizing, or if you need someone to help you imagine what kind of coaching program you want to create and what exactly should go into it, how to create it, And I'd love to talk with you. My Calendly link will be in the show notes. I'd love for you to schedule a call with me so we can get to know each other better and I can help you out.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephanie, so much.
You're welcome. And thank you for this opportunity to talk with you.
Absolutely. And I would love to leave our listeners with some kind of almost like a inspirational, not homework, but something that they could do this week. And I was thinking maybe since we've been talking about writing, maybe even something fun that could lend well to creative writing, like write a haiku or write a poem or something that we used to do when we were 12 years old that we don't do anymore. Do you have any thoughts or insights that might spring forth some creativity with our audience?
Yeah, I tend to kind of a cerebral approach to these things. So, one thing I find is if people are having a hard time kickstarting their imagination about what they want to write, one thing I find really helpful is turn your inner editor off. Don't worry about writing everything perfectly on the first try. I've found in my experience, if I try and edit and write at the same time, I do it just as much editing in the later editing, dedicated editing phase as I did if I just brain dumped. So if you're having trouble getting your creativity going, just brain dump. Don't worry about editing. Don't worry about perfection. Just write down all the ideas you have in whatever level of detail you have them. You can do bullet points. You can just do messy paragraphs. You can do whatever, but just brain dump it without any kind of editing or self-criticism. You can always clean up something that you've written, but you can't edit something that doesn't exist. So yeah, if perfectionism has been holding you back from creativity and from sharing what's on your mind with the world, I find that's a great first step.
Oh, that's really good. Brain dump.
Thank you.
And also I notice actually handwriting it too, because you have a tendency to not go back and like correct everything. Oh, that word's misspelled and things like that. It's kind of, rare these days for me personally to like longhand write things. So it's kind of fun. It feels a little creative. Like, oh, I could do a little flair with my handwriting or.
Yeah, I'll admit I tend to be pretty exclusive to the computers because I find my hand does not keep up with my brain.
Oh.
If I'm handwriting, but different strokes for different folks. And I'd say that's another thing for you in the audience, if you're listening to this, I'd say that's another thing to keep in mind is you got to do what works for you. All these different pieces of advice, I'd say, most of them do work. It's just that, any given piece of advice will work better for different people. So you got to find what works for you and unapologetically stick with what works for you. Be willing to experiment, but once you find what works for you, don't feel like you have to do it the way other people find useful if it isn't a fit.
Exactly. And again, turn that inner editor off.
Yep. The inner editor can come back later when it's their turn, but don't let them budge the line.
Yeah, especially don't let it impede on your creativity.
Yeah, and if you have to write the words worst draft, not even first drafted, worst draft, to remind yourself that this is the worst it's going to be, that's what it takes, do it. And that way you kind of remind yourself, this does not have to be my best work. It can just be the worst version of itself, and then it'll get better.
It always gets better. The first is the worst. I totally.
And it's really hard to think of everything at once. So once you've written that first draft, that part's off your brain, and then you have more room in your brain to think of the other things that can make it better.
Oh, that's a good point.
Thank you.
It really allows you to expand and grow and be mindful of other aspects of it too.
Yeah, and I find it's something I can do even when I'm tired. Like one time I needed to work on one of my coaching programs, but I was tired. It was near the end of the day, but I didn't really want to keep on procrastinating on it. So what I did, I just decided I'll outline this chapter or this lesson in it. So I just started doing bullet points, but then I had more ideas for each bullet point. So I ended up fleshing it out. So I ended up pretty much writing the entire lesson for that part of the coaching program on a day when I thought I could barely make myself do bullet points. There's a lot of power in just getting started and not being perfectionistic on a day when you're tired.
Yeah, exactly. And allow yourself that space, and it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yep.
I appreciate you sharing some of your insights. And
you're welcome.
And I really am grateful that you took the time to be here with us today.
And I'm grateful for you giving me this opportunity. And thank you very much.
Thank you. And to our audience out there, take the time this week to do a little creative writing, a little brain dump, tap into your imagination so that you can bring more happiness, more joy into your life, more flow. And remember to be guided by your imagination. Bye.
If you want to activate your imagination and creativity and have more fun in front of the camera with your photos and videos to market your business online or share your message to make a difference in the world, I'd love to offer you a complimentary 30-minute inspiration session, a Zoom room that we can set up and chat about ideas and inspiration to make your day a celebration with Guided by Imagination. Click the link in the show notes.